Please see him. He's a good man and thorough.
All right, man. Welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here.
So you actually produce podcasts, right?
That's one of my many jobs. Yes, I produced podcasts for 6 or 7 years, actually.
And how'd you get into it?
I got into it, someone I know here in LA, right when I moved here, this was like 8 years ago. He had a little boutique company and he was having, this was right when it was starting to get bigger and he needed an editor. And I have this kind of multitude of skills. So I started editing with him just, hourly rate. And then over the course of, the next 3 or 4 years, basically we became partners. He started to do less and less. I kind of started to take over. And at some point, he got another big job out of podcasting. And he basically said, hey, do you want to take over this company? And I said, yeah. So now I have probably 2 to 3 active all the time.
That's awesome, dude. Well, everybody watching this, just make note of that. Contact Nic Murphy for any complaints you have regarding this podcast, as he's producing one. But, podcast production wasn't how we ended up meeting each other, is it?
That's right. That's right.
So tell me a little bit more. How long has it been now? It's been like, my practice is still in Fairfax, so that must have been like 2015, 16 maybe we met?
Yeah, well, I have this story that you do come into of basically, I've kind of been sick my whole life in terms of, I started out with asthma, like when I was a kid, like the neb, cortisone, all that stuff. Then it kind of became this esophagitis, which is this inflammation of the esophagus, which we can get into. And that was pretty bad all through high school and college and my early 20s, kind of like lurking in the background. I wasn't eating very well. I was kind of overweight. I had this pretty, I was choking, I was throwing up. It was so embarrassing, really, really tough. And then when I moved out to LA, I'm probably 23 at this point, 24. I got a piece of food caught that was so bad I had to go to the hospital. I went into the ER, it was, what was it, like 10 a.m. I got it caught in the night. I slept over it, because some of these ordeals are like 16 hours. So it's like really brutal. I went into the ER and basically they shamed me and said, how did you not take care of this? This is really bad. We have to operate on you right now and take this piece of chicken out. And, it's kind of not mean, but just not nice. And then I was admitted to the hospital. They did this, they went in, took it out, and...
Had a piece of chicken in your esophagus?
Yeah.
Did they tell you that, were they browbeating you like you should chew more, or like what was the deal?
The actual ER nurse doctor didn't really know. She was kind of saying, well, like, let's swallow Coca-Cola. It's like, well, I've tried that all night, so I know all these tricks to get food to go down. But yeah, I think they were saying, why have you not talked to a medical person about this? And I was like, I don't know. So, the piece of chicken comes out and basically they put me on a liquid diet because they're really freaked out. My esophagus is very small, because there's a stricture, and I'm on this liquid diet for 2 months. And then they start dilating me, which is manually going in and ballooning the hole open. And it's like we're talking millimeters. They're opening it up. And it's really kind of painful. It's every other month. And I did probably, I don't know, 9 of those over the course of 9 or 10 months. At the end of that, it's not working. I'm really upset. I'm going on the YouTube and I'm basically looking around for, kind of, I think I actually found you through mouth tolerance, a video on mouth tolerance. And I really, this is a real story. And I'm not saying this because I'm on your podcast. I went to my mom and I said, I need a guy like this who's going to help me in a better way than these doctors. And my mom said, to her credit, she said, well, why not reach out to this guy? And I said, okay. So I reached out to you. We started to do remote, and actually crazily, basically what we just said is, hey, let's get you on a better diet where gluten, and we did this kind of pretty intense elimination diet. I did come see you, and pretty quickly the stricture went away. And then I had a really good 3 years. And that was just to your credit, or not to your credit or discredit, just like it was crazy that the medical institution hadn't really even hooked me up with a nutritionist at that point. And that was our first kind of go around, and we can talk about that. Obviously, we've had a second now, which I can get into, but...
Well, before we get into the second one, okay.
Sure.
So how long had it been that you've been getting these procedures where they ballooned your esophagus before you found me?
That was about 10 months. It was really kind of a long time, and it was pretty hard.
Right. So what did that feel like? Did it feel like more than a millimeter when they were sticking that thing down your throat?
Well, they put me out to sleep, and
Oh.
each time they told me how much they got, which was, we're talking millimeters. And so it was a little demoralizing around, what do you mean millimeters? Like, because I had a long way to go, basically, and they could only do a little at a time because it was traumatic to the flesh. And it was hard, man. It was hard.
So where were you and where did you need to be? Like, kind of paint the picture for people.
I think these numbers might be wrong, but my memory was I was around 8. And what I think it's millimeters, and average male is 40, something like that. So it was
Holy cow.
quite far from normal.
Okay. And it was more than one or just one?
It was basically what they called this stricture, and it was this point like right here around kind of my sternum that food got caught in.
What did it feel like?
It feels like it's very scary. It feels like there's a cork in your esophagus. The food gets caught. And you can't. And then if you drink water, it comes back up, and it's quite. And because your body's a little like, oh no, something's wrong, and yeah. And sometimes I've had like 16-hour stuck. I don't have that anymore, but I used to have that.
So you went on for a while managing this yourself, where like you didn't seek out medical attention. Why? What did you tell them? Like, is there a reason you didn't want to go to the doctor for this? Because clearly it was an issue.
I think that's a more psychological question. I think for some reason I didn't think it was bad. I didn't know if doctors could help me. Something in my childhood.
Yes, tell me about your mother. Please tell me about your mother.
It didn't connect with someone could help me.
Okay.
I didn't have faith in that.
All right. So then you go in there, you get the ballooning done. You're making millimeters, and you have, a ways to go on that. There's so you're centimeters away at this point if you're trying to get to 40. So did they ever tell you why you had this?
Basically, no.
Okay, because the condition's called
you go.
eosinophilic esophagitis, right? Eosinophilic. Right. So for everybody, what that means is there's a type of white blood cell. About 1% of our blood are white blood cells, and about 3% of our white blood cells in the healthy person are these things called eosinophils, and their job is to, be like surveillance, cells floating around. And when they see like a parasite, or if we have an allergy, they really get more prolific. So they'll go from like 3% to like 14, 15, 18%. And as a clinician, when you see that, the first things that you might think about would be some sort of bug living inside this person, or they might have some sort of significant reaction to something. So whether it's a chemical or a food, and it may not be so severe that they need an EpiPen, not that like a peanut allergy that would kill somebody, but like more of a chronic allergy where these things can be elevated. So I guess the first thing that I thought about was, well, why does your body think eosinophils need to be prolific along the esophagus? And to me, that would be really important because you can only do so many ballooning procedures. I mean, you go out every time, which is basically a form of anesthesia, which is, it can be in some people like a type of chemical concussion. It's knocking you out basically.
Yeah.
So you had 10 of those?
Yeah. It was hard. It was hard. And I don't think that even what you just explained, they weren't really talking like that. Because I also didn't really know, and it was like the GI fellow, and I didn't really like her. And I won't say where it was, but I didn't have a good experience this first time around with esophagitis.
So you didn't, I think if you're up for it, not talking about names or anything or locations, but like, what was it about this doctor's bedside manner that you didn't appreciate? Are you open to getting into
that? Yeah, sure. I'm just thinking, I think it was a narrow approach of, we have this thing that we do, it's a dilation, and this person needs it, and it wasn't subtle. And I think this was a very complicated thing that I've had a long time.
Yeah.
And then they were saying, another thing they said is put you on Pirlasec, which is a something for acid reflux. And I know that does connect to esophagitis sometimes. Mine doesn't. I never have. I do a little bit, but it's not like. And so I kept saying, like, that's not working for me. And they kept saying, well, have you tried Peerless? And I was like, Avi, yes. So that was it just felt like it was a wall of this is the default route that we do. And actually, we can get into this, but somewhere later on, I went back to them. And it's, again, a very prestigious LA, and they have an esophageal clinic. And I went to them, and I was like kind of excited of more like this was before our second round, but I wanted to talk to them again. And basically, he said again, Peerless and dilations. And I was like, man, that is. And my sweet father goes online, and he is researching cutting edge stuff. And he's setting, and I said to them, hey, have you guys heard of this? And they, oh, no, that's not real. Peerless and dilations. And I thought, man, really turned me off.
Remember what you asked them? What in terms of like cutting edge?
My dad, I mean, who knows if this is real? He's a sweet guy, but he found something which is something you can take when you're having an episode that releases the muscles. And, it's in a trial or something, but they were saying this is something that you could like an EpiPen because eosinophilic esophagitis is getting worse. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I first got diagnosed, nobody knew what this was. Now everybody knows what this is. So I think it's something you can take that helps you get it through the moment.
Okay, understood. And so then basically your doctor was like, no, dilation. And...
He didn't even know what it was.
Okay. Wow. All right. So, were you, you're from the Midwest, right?
Yeah.
Are you from Minnesota?
Minnesota.
Where at Minnesota?
Twin Cities, kind of suburban Twin Cities.
Like what, Brooklyn Park? Like what?
It's called like Stillwater.
You're from Stillwater?
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Outside of it.
Right on. Well, I guess that's besides the point, but I thought maybe you were making a pun when you said that this person that's focused on the constrictor was being narrow-minded.
That's funny.
Because, we have like, the worst pun humor in the Midwest usually. So I thought maybe that's what was going on there. All right.
Narrow-minded doctors.
All right. So you did some research and you found me on Google, basically, on YouTube?
Yes.
And it was mouth tolerance, but I think what you meant was oral tolerance.
Oral tolerance.
Might have been mouth tolerance. It might have been. I don't know. So we did some remote work. I remember that. And so when you, like, I was on Zoom way back. Mm-hmm. Like Zoom, I wonder if Zoom had like a premium member, like I got it. Like, I don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like mileage on Zoom. But, so when you got me on the video consult and I started talking about it, were you like, come on, man, what was your feeling like? Because you'd had a bunch of doctors that you'd worked with that were doing what their model said would be the best thing. And I'm not here to shit on that model at all. I think that they provided you with the diagnosis. They gave you options. For some people, those options work really well, I think, and it might have worked faster. My whole thing is, how's that working? And the people that I see tend not to be responding to what they've tried already for various reasons. So I try to figure that out. So what was your impression when we started talking? I don't remember, like, it's been a while now. So like, what was that like from your side?
It wasn't, come on, man. It was, thank God. It was a relief of someone is going to be data-driven. This is weird because I'm on your podcast, but this is true. Someone's going to be data-driven while also interested in more alternative things, kind of that mixture. Because, in LA or anywhere, there is a whole world of alternative zany people that I love and I appreciate that. But that is not connected to science, I think.
Yeah, no, I love the word zany. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was cool to have someone who's going to look at me. We did a lot of filling out charts. We talked about things. Hey, let's look at totally what's happening and talk about that. And especially with foods. How can we, because that was one of my memories. This is a great, sad Nic Murphy memory, is crying in a grocery store during this period before I met you. What can I fucking eat? Sorry to swear. What can I eat? And it was a little like, so getting to you and saying, hey, let's really do some data-driven work around food was super good, relieving.
It makes sense that if you have your esophagus is like inflamed, might you be eating something that's going down that tube that it didn't like, you know what I mean? And if that happens enough, I wonder if the tube just gets inflamed it wasn't happening in your stomach for some reason. I'm guessing there was some sort of injury, and then there just got to be a little bit of micro trauma, and that little bit of micro trauma created immune system in the area, and then the immune system also is a product of like whatever your genes are saying you're more likely to be reactive to. And then you started to accumulate eosinophils because like you were having an open space, or you were having a nidus of inflammation in an area that normally wouldn't, and so it just became like this like downward spiral. What's the worst case scenario there where they take it out, right?
Well, what they were always worried about is it's going to rip. If it rips, it's a big problem. If it rips something stuck, if they rip it, then you're like, it's a serious, you could die. But I don't know. Well, you can whatever you want to do, but with this story, but my sweet girlfriend also has esophagitis. How did we find
She
each
does?
other? She does. Yeah.
Your girlfriend has esophagitis?
Yeah. Yeah.
You never told me that, dude.
Yeah. And when she was 22, and she's not here right now, but they put in a stint. They took out her flap and they put this thing in, which she doesn't have it anymore. But now she has
flap at the top of the esophagus.
No, down this one.
Oh, okay. There.
And though it did kind of cure her choking, she has really insane acid reflux now, and we're always worried. So that was something that maybe they don't do that anymore, but certainly I see through her eyes, they did this big medical procedure, took out her flap, put in a stint, and it did take away the swallowing problem, the choking problem, but man, did it cause other problems.
So they put something in there to stop to keep it open, basically.
Correct.
But now it's not functioning properly, and she's getting leakage of acid into her esophagus, and it hurts.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that in 50 years, if someone looks at this podcast, they're going to say, holy cow, how barbaric that people were doing this. Even the ballooning procedure, I feel like is pretty barbaric.
Well, it is. But the thing is, it makes sense in a way. It's like, oh, it's a small space. We just open it. And I think the paradigm is to really not be look, if it's cancer, they're going to want to know that. They know it's your white blood cells. So they kind of run through their logarithm and say, well, this is white blood cells. It's not cancer. It doesn't, if it rips, they're in trouble. We need to like open this so it doesn't rip.
Yeah.
I have had one client who, because of Barrett's esophagus or complications of cancer, had to have their esophagus removed.
Yes.
And they ended up using part of their stomach. They just ballooned their stomach up to try to connect it, and it hasn't been pleasant for that person. So I have heard of situations where the esophagus doesn't make it. So how long after we started talking before things started turning around for you?
Again,
so you're like, okay, you're like, thank God, whatever, this is great. Somebody who's going to be open-minded about what it is. And that's the thing, like there are some zany things out there, but I don't really care what a person does, so to speak, as long as we kind of know what we're trying to do and then have a way to measure it. So let's say like it's not a one-step process and I do one of these zany things. Well, then how do I know it worked if there's really no way to measure that other than what I'm looking for as a clinician? I think that's the biggest problem with alternative medicine is that, the standard model, there's some limitations there in terms of they look for diseases that they can treat, and then they have research treatments that they can do, and they provide those, and it's a awesome thing. And the alternative model is like, well, I'm a chiropractor, so I will adjust, and if that helped your esophagitis, then great, that validates what I'm doing. If I'm a naturopath and I help you with like a food plan and that helps you, then that validates it, But how did a food plan cause your esophagitis to improve? How did an adjustment, if it worked, cause the esophagitis to improve? Or if I did like some sort of like one of these zany things and I'm just going, yeah, this is what I do. This is what you get. I'm going to touch your forehead and you're going to fall backwards. Mm-hmm. And when you fall backwards, that means it worked. Okay, well, how do we get from point A to point B? If like, we actually need to get to like point M. We have to have a way of measuring how we're doing other than how do I feel today? And I think that as an alternative medicine doctor, we can fall into the trap of only looking for what we look for. And so although I'm super open to what I was trained to do as a primary modality intervention, I'm less concerned about what it's going to be that helps you and more concerned about, well, what's the mechanism that's driving your symptoms? And then we just kind of figure out, well, what could that possibly be? And then what are you willing to try? And then let's implement what you're willing to try. And if that worked, great. Then we understand what that meant. And then we can make these lifestyle changes so that it's not repetitive when it's possible. Sometimes there's permanent injury and that's harder to do, but that's the whole deal. So like after we spoke, how long was it before you're like, man, I feel better?
I would say almost a month or two. I feel like getting on a cleaner, I was calling that like a low inflammation diet, what we did, and really getting on that kind of cleaned this thing up right away in terms of, we're talking a few months. And really, I was on that very strict diet, even not doing sugar. I didn't do sugar for a whole year, for 2 years. And those were kind of my healthiest years ever. Because I would say before that, as a teen and in my young 20s, I was just eating garbage all the time.
Yeah, like most things, you know?
Yeah. And I had a doctor when I was a baby, because I'm just a really sensitive, inflamed person, say I needed to go on a rotating diet when I was like 3. And for some reason, my parents or me, it just was too hard to do. We didn't end up doing that. But it is interesting that has been around my whole life of, man, foods are really sensitive. And so here I am now, and, gluten we know is the devil. But
I know, it's so sad. Like, it's sad, but it's also good information. I say sad because who doesn't? Well, I love gluten. You know what I mean? I can't have it too. I have celiac.
Yeah.
So, I don't have the kind of celiac that you get digestive symptoms. I have the kind where I get acne, even though I'm an adult, I'll get acne and then I'll get vertigo from it and anxiety. Wow. So I actually the last time I had gluten was I went to Rome last year and I'm like, all right, I'm having pizza, and then I end having a little bit more and a little bit more. I thought I'm fine. And then sure enough, like 2 weeks later, I'd lost 15 pounds because I had malabsorption.
Wow.
No, I had no digestive symptoms. So the gluten thing is like, you have doctors that completely deny, they're like gluten deniers. And then you have doctors that think everything is gluten and it's the only thing it could be. And even like, do you know why gluten is a problem? Like, I know genetically we didn't run the genes, I don't think, did we?
No.
Okay, but like, did I ever explain to you why?
Not really. All just I'm sensitive to it, but no, yeah, not really. Just I'm sensitive to it.
So the reason so many people are sensitive to gluten and the reason it's gotten worse, it's not because we're more aware of it now. It's because there's hybridization of grain and then stuff attached to the grain that makes it more likely to cause problems. So here's what happens. Gluten is what's called a lectin. It's a type of protein that's in food and mostly grains and like nuts. And sometimes, well, it's in eggs, it's in nightshades. And so it is sticky. That's why like gluten-free, like it took a long time for like baked goods to catch up, gluten-free, because you can't make decent baked goods without gluten. At least that was the thought process, because without gluten keeping everything together, it just is like a grainy, gross, like cardboardy mess. It's not fluffy, lovely at all. So what gluten does is it goes into your stomach and it's sticky. Your digestive enzymes, especially people with celiac, they don't break it down very well. And so then what happens is the undigested protein goes into the small intestine, and the immune system catches wind of that. These eosinophil things and other stuff we talked about earlier, they catch wind of that and they start attacking it. And so it creates holy hell in your digestive system for some people, but for other people, it's their pancreas. It's a big cause of type 1 diabetes. And for other people, it's their brain. So it's a major cause of schizophrenia. In the literature, you'll see that. But then what's made it worse is when you hybridize a grain, it's even harder for the digestive system to break it down. It's like made resilient to pests and things that bother it, to make it like for yield, basically. And so what happens is it's harder to break down. And then what makes it even worse is like glyphosate can attach to it, like burns itself on to the protein of the grain. And then it also makes it harder to break down. So like basically, if you were able to digest wheat into its amino acids, like basically the bricks that make up a wall, so to speak, of wheat, then you would be fine. But because it's hard to break down, because it's sticky, and because hybridization of the grain by modern farming, and because of like glyphosate and other pesticides being on the grain, burning the grain, and almost like when you burn something, it looks different. The digestive system doesn't recognize it anymore. It doesn't break it down, and then the immune system freaks out. But there's enough of it that looks like your body. So the problem is gluten looks like your small intestine. So your immune system starts attacking gluten, and then it goes, wait a minute, I'm going to attack this over here, and that's your small intestine. Or it may attack your esophagus, or it may attack your brain, or it might attack your pancreas, and you could get type 1 diabetes, or it could cause you to attack your joints, and you could get arthritis from it. It's literally, I could show you a diagram. I can include the diagram later, basically in post with this whole thing, but the diagram shows how gluten has been connected to all these different conditions. And you don't even have to have celiac, which is what you and I have. Okay. You can have what's called non-celiac gluten sensitivity, where it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it's like, well, what are the number one symptoms of like non-celiac gluten sensitivity? Well, it would be, your bowels inflamed, so you have IBS. How many people have IBS? Okay. And then you have like, well, the bowel's inflamed and the brain can be inflamed. So it can cause depression. It can cause anxiety. It can cause insomnia. It can lead to chronic inflammation that can cause other types of autoimmunity unrelated to gluten. It can lead to chronic infection. It can make COVID much worse. It can lead to things like an immune system that's weakened, and so you end up with cancer. It can contribute to things like allergies, like asthma. So it's like, now we're talking about something that we eat every day that is influencing every known, just about, it's an exaggeration, but so many degenerative disease processes that we experience. For example, dementia. It influences how our brain develops, so it can contribute to ADHD and autism. But the question isn't, is gluten the issue, or could gluten be an issue? The question is, was it an issue for you? And how do we know it's an issue for you? And one way to do it is to do genetic testing, which we didn't do. Another way to do it is to do antibody testing to look to see if you're making antibodies to gluten or something called transglutaminase, which is part of gluten. And if they're there, then it's suggestive. And the other way, if people don't have the budget for that, because those tests can be several $100s, is to just avoid it strictly and avoid other things that look like it, like dairy and some other grains strictly, and then include it after like some time away from it. And the gold standard for diagnosis of celiac is actually to biopsy the intestines. You have symptoms, biopsy the intestines, then say, oh, wow, these intestines are just mush. Let's get you off gluten because you have the genes for it. And then you avoid it for 6 months, and then they biopsy you again, and they're like, oh, hey, you're healed, so it looks like maybe it was celiac, so why don't you eat gluten again? And then in 6 months, we're going to check you again. And if it's destroyed, then yeah, you should stay away from it. That's how they do that. My first ever experience with this was I had a date actually. And the person I was on a date with, I'd been in California for about a year. And I'm from the Midwest, a lot of people grow wheat for their, and so like, when I heard about gluten, it was celiac sprue. And like 15% of people have it. It's not really that prevalent. I'm a chiropractor. Why do we even care about this? I'm never going to see it. Doctors are going to manage this. But you go to the doctor, and then this is what happens. You know what I mean? They try to open the hole, which is serving you. Great. Okay. But what else can we do here? So then basically you have this idea where it becomes so big that it can't be true. Is it possible that gluten actually could be the bogeyman, basically, and causing all of these things? And that the answer is, for a lot of people, gluten restriction is the actual thing that will be enough of a change for them to get them out of the symptom range, even if it doesn't fix everything.
Well, one thing I remember was when we did I think it was antibody testing, my gluten didn't even register. And that was interesting because remember you were saying, you should tell that because that was interesting about why that was.
Well, okay, so like that's the thing about testing, where yours were so low that we couldn't even measure them.
Yeah.
And I see that in severe cases because it's like burned out. Like you burned out that system. And so the types of antibodies, you've just been sending troops to battle so severely, and the reaction was so severe for so long that it's like basically you weren't even using antibodies anymore, dude. You were using eosinophils, which is a different type of white blood cell, because like you had to like pivot. So that's what was going on. And you know, you do this food restriction, and within 2 months, significant changes, which is cool. Would you say that you were cured? Because I can't say that you were cured, but did you ever go back to your doctor for a checkup after we worked together and they looked at you and said, "Oh, this is amazing"?
No, I didn't, but I didn't have symptoms for 2.5 years. I didn't choke.
Okay, so after like one of your last visits there, you're like, okay, I found this other doctor. I'm going to work with them for now. You didn't have to go back to them.
I didn't want. I think I may have done one more dilation somewhere, and they said it was improving considerably. So I don't remember that moment specifically, but certainly I got a kind of a nod from them, and then a anecdotal. It's getting better.
Did they ask you why? What you been doing?
I can't remember. I was probably mad at them at that point.
So did with your condition, like the people that you were, I reckon you might have been talking to other people with this. Your girlfriend has this. What's the prognosis? I mean, is it just a lifetime of doing the balloon thing, or
and chewing? Chew your food carefully. I think, in the good world, which is I think where we are, I think through diet and kind of being careful, I think it could go away completely.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. So there's no cure for celiac, but remission is possible. And remission means that the white blood cells are no longer attacking that tissue. One of the tried and true ways to do that is to avoid eating the food that keeps like sparking that inflammatory reaction. That's the deal. So what does your girlfriend think of that story? I mean, she's gluten-free too, right?
She's vegan, gluten-free.
Did that help her? Had she already been gluten-free? Did she figure that out on her own before you met her?
Yes, she figured that out on her own. And she's pretty careful because it does mess her up. I'm less careful because I have addiction to food or something, but she's pretty careful.
Yeah. Okay. But she feels it right away.
I don't know if I've ever even.
You said it messes her up. You said it messes her up. So.
Well, I could ask her. I don't really know because she never eats it. And she's, I've been with her a year and a half. She has not eaten a single piece of gluten.
Yeah, I guess if you're worried that you could have to go to the hospital, then that'll discourage you. And that was the deal with that person with the little card. So they basically on this date, she pulled out this thing and
wow,
handed the waiter, and I still to this day haven't seen this. Handed the waiter a card. She had it so bad that if she ate gluten, she could go to the emergency room. That's how bad her celiac was. So, but I just thought I was even in the field, and back then I was like, yeah, right, dude. Like this is totally.
Wow.
I really was skeptical. I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't think it was as bad as what she was saying. For some reason, I didn't believe her. Like many doctors, I was just like, whatever, there's something else going on up here. It was really rude what I was thinking. I didn't say it, but I was thinking that. And I just thought, how can you live like that? I mean, it's not like you can just avoid gluten the rest of your life. Like, how can you live like that? And imagine being so ill that you actually could go to the ER if you have it, and then have people telling you it's not true. It can't be true. And then imagine also having like fatigue and depression and anxiety, being on the spectrum, and being told like you need methamphetamine, being told there's no reason for this, it's just genetic. And like you see like this like healthcare system wrestling with issues that stem from inflammation from this issue, where if it was just like part of a standard of care where at least we evaluate it for the person to make sure that it's not true for them and then move on And if it is, and they help them make that change, how awesome would that be? Instead of just being dismissed. So you have people that are being dismissed that have severe issues. You have people with chronic issues where it's not even being considered.
Yeah. And also it's this thing around gluten that you ate 2 weeks ago could be affecting you now, which feels crazy. It feels like that's not real. But I feel like once you get off gluten, it takes a little bit for the rewards of brain fog to go away. You have a little more. So it is funny. And I think that feels so illogical, even though I think it's real. It's been real in my life of gluten you ate 2 or 3 weeks ago could still be in your system.
Well, but what happens is the reason that is because the gluten reaction is an immune reaction.
Right.
And you have cells that have been trained to have a response, and they just have their response. And if they think part of your body is also gluten, then you can stop the gluten, but it's going to keep reacting to your body. But those cells live about 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's the half-life, I should say. They live 6 weeks. So about half of those cells are going to be dead within 3 weeks. So that's why that's happening.
Hmm.
That's a tried and true history finding. Somebody, they quit gluten or they quit something and they felt maybe a little bit better right away, but they didn't really notice that until after a while. And it's because that immune system was loaded for bear and needed to calm down.
Well, let's keep going with the story because we got a whole nother half that is interesting and harrowing.
Okay.
So basically, I have this 2 years, pretty good. We kind of stop working together. I get busy with work because it was better. It was better. Kind of, I start eating bad again through, I think, again, therapy.
Where'd you go, man? Like, I lost track of you. Like, where'd you go? What happened?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of I was feeling better, I was getting busy with work, I was getting a big boy job, and things were just happening, and this was probably 26 to 29, something like that.
Big time movie producer, you're just over there living your life.
Well, theater, yeah, I got a big theater job, and I worked there for 4.5 years, and we didn't really work during that time. So then flashback, flash forward, whatever you want to call it, to it's about a year ago, almost exactly. You and I haven't worked together in a while. I'm eating kind of healthy, but I'm not being super strict. Sometimes I do choke, not as bad as it used to be, but that symptom is kind of around. And I'm going to France. I'm very stressed out with my work, as more stressed than I've ever been, which we can talk about if that affected it or not. I'm in the bathtub and I feel there's a lump on one of my testicles, and I thought that felt weird. Certainly it felt very, very weird.
How big was it?
A marble, maybe, but it
Man.
definitely felt like that was what I can tell anyone, male-bodied people who are looking at their testicles. It's like, it felt weird. It didn't feel like normal. It felt like that's a weird thing. But I'm in France, so I finish out that job. 2-3 weeks later, I go to a urologist, just because I'm worried about this thing. Everyone in my whole life is telling me it's okay.
You have checking this all the time, huh? You're just like, how is it still there? It must just drive you crazy.
It was scary. Yeah, it was weird. Yeah, it was. I go in, and he's kind of I don't know if we can say this on this podcast, but he's kind of like a make your dick bigger doctor. He's like pretty cosmetic, and he's not. And so he doesn't really know, and he feels it. He says, I don't really know. Probably not. Let's put you to an ultrasound. But pretty casual. I'm like, okay.
Really?
Yeah, super casual. And it's like 2 weeks out, and I'm like, should I get it earlier? And he's like, if you're worried, let's get it earlier. I go in, I do the ultrasound. I go back in. So now I would say it's been 5 weeks since I felt it.
Does it get bigger?
Not at this point, but it will get bigger. He comes in and says, I think it's cancer, and we have to take out. And he's kind of nervous. I'm sure he doesn't do this that much. I'm nervous of wait, oh, it's cancer. And because that word is so loaded, and he says, we'll take out the testicle. And I'm like, whoa. So that was a really kind of crazy moment. And we schedule the surgery, orchiectomy, that's in a week. And during that week, it grows huge. It's like becomes a grapefruit, very painful. So it's funny that kind of spiritually, as it heard it's getting taken out, it got super huge. And thankfully, from grace of God, this urologist knew the head of UCLA Oncology, Mark Litwin, who is similarly on YouTube, very amazing person. And he got me in with this guy, and we go in. And first they tell me 70% of men Just get the testicle taken out and you're fine. That would be stage 1. So everyone everybody's saying, don't worry, this is going to be easy. We're just going to take it out. It's going to be fine. We do it. That surgery is very simple. Hardly easier almost than the...
I would imagine this thinking of having one of your balls taken out a simple procedure.
Well, first of all, what he said was within 3 days, the other testicle realizes it's alone, makes more sperm, makes more testosterone, and it's fine.
Like a few days, and it's like, I guess he's not coming back.
And it grows a little bit, and so there wasn't a long-term ramification. You can get a prosthetic. I decided not to, but
wow,
I felt like the reason I didn't get a prosthetic is because when I have a Reddit support group, Testicular Cancer r/, and they're saying sometimes there are problems with it, and they have to go back in again in a couple years. And I just feel like I don't want to mess with that. It doesn't matter really. I don't care about the cosmetics of my one lone ranger.
Yeah.
So then they do all the tests. I get a CT scan. At this point in my cancer journey, I don't even know to be afraid of CT scans. I didn't understand that this is the moment that they're deciding, has it metastasized or
not? Yeah.
Sad. I go in, it has. It's in the lymph nodes, and there's 3 bigger nodes in my stomach that they're worried about, and it's time for chemo. And so this was a real, because before this, it didn't feel like cancer. It felt like, let's take out the mole, kind of. This is, oh my gosh, chemotherapy, Breaking Bad, Walter, the Hollywood machine has told me chemotherapy is really bad. I'm going to lose my hair. I had really long hair. And
you did have long hair, man.
It was scary. And I really had to, but there wasn't really any options. He was saying, look, this is what we got to do. And they staged me at stage 2B, I think, and almost 3, they were saying, but it wasn't 3, because 3 means it's in multiple places. It was only in my abs. So I did it. I shaved my head, and we did 12 weeks of chemo, and this is a kind of a hard one it's 5 days in a row, and then you have these little outposts, and then you do that 3 times. And it was gnarly. I think it went great. I didn't have any emergencies, and the first round was pretty easy in the fact I was still kind of strong. Second round started to get hard, and then, man, that third round was totally brutal. And even the month after that was really just hard.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do chemo. I'm beaten down. I think we've done it. I'm so, we're over. I've been doing all my stoicism, Buddhism, crossing off lists, calendars, and all. I did a great job. My parents, were in an Airbnb here. It was a kind of a crazy thing. We have another scan. Now I'm nervous because now I know what this means. Because I know that the next one is called the RPNLD surgery, which is they go in and they take out these nodes. So, lo and behold, my nodes did not shrink enough. The 3 ones are still there. The cutoff is 1 centimeter, and they're like 1.4. And
so this was planned? They planned to go look at the nodes and take them out, and then they were just too big, you're saying?
The hope is that chemo blasts these nodes and they're gone, or 0.5, they're dead tissue. And that sometimes happens. Again, all these doctors, and bless their heart, I know why they do this, but they're always so positive around, it's going to be fine, you're going to be done.
Yeah,
because they have to be. So, but it wasn't the case for me. They shrunk some, which was good, because my doctor said, look, this is a good outcome, because she's seen some chemotherapy patients where it's popped up in other places after chemo. That would be bad. It gets worse. This is definitely getting better, just not better enough. And we had a big discussion around, do we want to surveillance it or do we want to do this surgery? And both Dr. Masters, who was my chemotherapy person, and Dr. Litwin both basically said, look, it's up to you, but I would go in and take him out, because just make sure, just like I kind of use the metaphor of a football game. Winning a game in the NFL is so hard. Every team is good. Everyone's a professional. That if you're up by 3 points, 2 points, 1 point, kneel the fucking ball. Do not throw. Let's get this win here. And I think the doctors were saying curing cancer is so hard because it's a zombie machine in your body that if you have a chance to get a cure, let's go for it. because testicular cancer can be cured. It's one of the, what is like a 94% 5-year survival. And let's do it. So the day that we decided I'm going to do the surgery was the worst day because I knew it was going to be hard. It's by far the hardest thing. So now it's been 6 months. I had the surgery right at the end of last year for insurance purposes. And beyond some digestive problems and some, bloating, it was hard for like a month or two. There is I guess I want to share, if we want to do this on this podcast, of retrograde ejaculation, which is messed up. I can still orgasm kind of, but nothing comes out. So beyond the fun of sex, there is a sense of kids, and it just really sucks. And now I'm in surveillance. They're going to surveillance me for 5 years, which I'm very grateful for, and I'm not going to die probably. But, cancer left a real mark on me. And that's when I reached back out to you. I was feeling super crummy. This was in January, and I was like, I need Dr. Joe again because I love my doctors at UCLA. They're awesome, and I highly recommend UCLA. And they're not bespoke white glove people because they have too many clients. They're celebrities, and I needed to recover. And now I have to say I am feeling a lot better. I'm 6 months out. So that's the second story.
So if we just go back a second.
Sure.
So you had a lump. You went to a doctor. They're like, I'm not too worried about it. Doctor comes back in later, says, I think it's cancer. We need to do something about this. You end up a week later sitting in a exam table to have your testicle removed. And in between then, it got the size of a grapefruit.
Yeah.
Okay. And then afterwards, they did chemo, and the chemo was pretty rough the third time. You shaved your head and all that stuff, but it also would have fallen out, right? Yeah. And then you had a lymph node scan, and the scan said the chemo wasn't as effective as we wanted it to be. And then after that, how did that resolve? How did you end up where you are now? So like, so that's where I lost the story first.
Yeah, good question. I don't think I told that part. So basically a month after that scan where it wasn't this, they went in with this RPLND surgery and actually physically removed the nodes. Okay. They did it laparoscopically, which everyone was excited about because otherwise, I'm going to stand up. Otherwise, it's a huge open scar, which is way worse. But they went in and they pulled out, I think, 20 or so lymph nodes of my stomach, which it has what they've said to me is the stomach has the most lymph nodes, so they're not that worried about any lymph problems. They pulled out 20. The 3 that were bigger, they did find teratoma, which is the slow-growing, non-metastatizing cancer. So it has to come out, but it's not the bad kind. So we didn't find any of the bad kind, which was good. Because if you find one little bit of the bad kind, then it's everywhere. So, and then so that was a super positive result from the ab surgery.
Okay. So then after that, what's the plan at the oncology center? Like, where do they leave you? So Hero Medicine came in. Look, let's say you reached out to me before any of these other doctors. I'd have been like, you got to go to a doctor to have this lung check. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to go back to gluten-free. This is going to take care of it, right? You had to go get this done. You had the medicine. It's amazing what they can accomplish and do.
Yeah.
So where did you leave off with them? So what happened? Like, what's next in terms of that model? Like,
basically, look, I love them and I'm not dissing them, but basically they said, eat healthy, get off alcohol, and I'll see you every 4 months for 5 years. They didn't, and get a primary care person. And when I went to the primary care person, she was very sweet, but she was not an expert at cancer or nowhere near, not to blow smoke at you, but nowhere near the kind of curious and I just felt like, oh, I need something more than this.
When they say eat healthy, what do they mean?
I think something around low inflammation.
So, and what would a low inflammatory diet that you might get from your primary care look like?
They did not offer the details of that. This was they basically were just saying, hey, take care of your body. And I've done a lot of research but no one really, maybe I didn't reach out to them, but I don't feel like they held my hand in the post-cancer period.
Yeah, and this isn't to like, look, your doctors did amazing. Okay, so I'm not fishing or looking for some sort of like way to put a negative light on this amazing intervention that you had that was successful. What I think is important is to like the next level, which is part of a comprehensive plan, is to go, okay, what is healthy for you? And why did you have cancer all of a sudden? And when you were in France, you were really stressed out, you're saying?
The most stressed out I've ever been in my whole life.
So like the thing about high eosinophils, and if going back to your first story, is that eosinophils are in a class of white blood cells. Not to get too technical, they're called Th2. Okay. And the type of cells that kill cancer are Th1. And when you have a dominance of a Th2 system, it's like a teeter-totter. It can suppress the Th1. And so people that are Th2 dominant with like allergy and asthma in their history, and like lab markers of like high Th2 cells combined with low Th1 cells, are more likely to activate. Well, they may have the same oncogene activation from their environment, but then have a kind of a impaired immune reaction to those oncogenes. So like the things that we need natural killer cells to kill cancer cells might be biased towards more eosinophils. And so like when I heard about your case and you came back and you're like, hey, listen, this is what I've been through. I remember your hair was gone. I was like, what's going on here? I had no idea. Mm-hmm. And I really had little to offer during that whole process, I think, in terms.
Except you did say this thing, which you just described, the teeter-totter. And I want to say, and it makes me a little emotional, nobody was saying that in the Western medicine hero medical. They were not interested in my body outside. And I love them. They did a great job. But
they did an amazing job. But
you were the only one that said something of, well, maybe this is connected to your other problems. That was interesting.
It could be. We'll never know for sure. But like the whole idea, the reason I'm doing this podcast is I want to get conversations going with non-clinicians too, to get client experiences. I say client because patient means to suffer. It sounds weird when I say client for a lot of people. I don't like that. But like, I can't say student. Okay. But doctor means teacher in Latin. Mm-hmm. So I try to collaborate with my clientele instead of just tell them what to do and just assume they're suffering and I'm going to rescue them. And I think that it's not bad to rescue somebody. Okay. Yeah. But the next level is to go, well, why do we need to rescue? Let's make sure this doesn't happen again. And it's not to say that model is a failure. That model is successful in doing exactly what it was designed to do. But there are aspects of a person's health and vitality that are not being met by some of the existing models that are out there. And one aspect of that that's hard to prove is prevention. Can't prove that. I can't prove to you, okay, that this issue was there, but guess what your eosinophils were when we looked at them again? Okay, they were high. Mm-hmm. They were high. You had shown improvement on gluten-free. And the thing is like the eosinophils were back up, meaning the Th1 was probably down. We didn't look at natural killer cells. We have that on our things that we might want to explore, okay, in terms of like a long-term strategy for you is to look at natural killer cell activity. That's something called a T and B cell profile to see if, not activity, but the number of natural killer cells to see if they're abundant to help that. When you're stressed out, what does stress do to the immune system? It polarizes it and it kind of turns down the natural killer cells and it turns down some of the things in a way that could make it harder to fight cancer. So it's almost like this perfect storm for you. I mean, something happened that caused that area. Now, the genetic predisposition was there for that area. Something happened. And I believe stress was part of that whole story. So anytime I'm working with somebody that is in cancer recovery, it's to try to help the system get it back up and running and understand that we want to identify the things that made them vulnerable and try to remove those things so that they're not vulnerable still, because the hero medicine took away the result of being vulnerable. It didn't necessarily, if they said eat less inflammatory food, it sounds like, and don't drink alcohol, which I think is great advice. I think that's like the low hanging fruit. They just say, now go figure that out. And that's not our role. But I think that was good advice. So I don't think they let you down that way. But I do feel like in post cancer, like you want to know if your TGF beta is high. Okay. TGF beta is a chemical biomarker that can help you understand, are your natural killer cells able to do their job? You want to know what your white blood cells are doing. If you have that Th2 tipping, you want to try to offset that by changing the lifestyle that's promoting it. And you want to, potentially take supplements to help boost the other aspects of the immune system. Where that can be tricky is if you have cancer and autoimmunity and taking immune boosting supplements, you have autoimmunity potentially. That's that celiac thing that's causing the eosinophilic esophagitis, right? So like if we give you immune boosting things, maybe you don't feel so good because like it's like 50 cents of one, half a dollar of the other. And so then we got to work on another type of white blood cell called a Treg cell. So it can become very complicated, but it's a worthy exploration, dude.
Yeah. And the end of this story is I was feeling really crummy in January, kind of depressed, to be honest. I had been, but all throughout chemo, I had been eating pizza and burritos and just get anything to get through. I had gained 20 pounds. I was down, man. And I'm not a person that really gets that depressed in my life because I'm kind of a buoyant person.
Up.
January and February this year sucked, man, really sucked. And you and I had a conversation where you kind of a little, what's that tough love said, well, why are you still eating gluten even if we know it's bad for you? Because I was relying. And the interesting thing is, well, it makes me feel better in the moment having a pizza or, these kind of tasty foods. And it was a good thing of pretty much between you and my girlfriends both prodding me, hey, you got to get off gluten. It really helped me because getting off gluten, now I've been off about 2 months through your support and my girlfriend too, but I feel so much better and I'm back in the gym and I'm losing weight and I feel like that was a final little part of it's like this vicious circle of you're depressed because you're eating gluten, and if you're a food addict, you're eating pizza, which makes you depressed. So that was getting out of that cycle kind of emotionally too was really helpful, and I do feel like I'm feeling better than I've felt in definitely a year now.
So what do you think allowed you to get out of that loop? Because it's a tough loop. It's a tough loop when you know it's the thing, but there's an addiction part of it. Like, what was it for you?
It's around, you only have one body and you only have one life. And even though I didn't die, I did face something that could kill me. If I didn't have done this stuff, I would die from testicular cancer. And I think there's a little bit of, hey, we got to do some things in life and take a stand and break some cycles and grow. And I think there was a moment where I just felt like, hey, I don't want to be like this I don't know if it was a rock bottom or anything, but certainly a feeling of I can do something to change this, and finding that willpower, that grit inside you of, yo, life is super tragic. It's very disappointing. And let's do the best we can. And if I can never eat pizza again, so be it. You have to accept the lot that you're given by God or the science or the aliens, whatever you want to say is underneath the magic of life. You do have to respect it and say, well, this is I'm not in charge here, because if I was in charge, you'd live forever, everybody would have money, you could eat pizza whenever you wanted. But that's not true. You have to kind of be tough and make choices. And I want to feel healthy.
That's really interesting. The thing is like, can you describe for you, because I agree, it's kind of like, it's tough sometimes as a clinician watching people that you're invested in have a hard time making that choice that you feel could help them. And, it's tempting. I think maybe any doctor, maybe not for every doctor, maybe some of them will admit this, but maybe patients have felt this too. They feel a little judgment from their doctor about the choices they're making. And I try not to feel that way, but sometimes I'm just like, man, it's really, this aggression will not stand, man. Like, I don't know how to get through I don't know how to crack that nut and help people make that choice so we can at least see if this would help them or not. I'm like, it's really tricky. And acceptance, I think, is one of the biggest missing pieces in healthcare. People, if they can accept where they are and accept the information that's given to them and be willing to try things to see what happens, it's so useful. But like, can you describe, because you said acceptance was a big deal. How did you end up in acceptance instead of resignation? Because resignation can feel very similarly. I think a lot of patients feel like I'm trying to force them into something sometimes. And of course, I'm not trying to force them. I'm trying to help them see the possibilities, the choices that they have when they feel like they have none. People that have cancer sometimes are given a choice of life or death based upon a chemotherapy that is not even researched. It's experimental, right? They're at this point where they don't have a lot of choices. They're just going to do the best they can and try. Helping people see the choices they have and not feel resigned and instead feel like an acceptance is so important. And how did you get to the level of acceptance instead of resignation? Or were you a resignation for a while?
I think I have a pretty strong philosophical base already because cancer didn't shake me at all. I was already on this kind of Buddhist stoic bullshit of you have one life to live, go live it. But I think before I got the testicle taken out, I did a lot of work of, if I don't wake up, is that okay? And and basically I said, yeah, it's okay. If you die, if at the end of this, if I die, you have to think it's okay. It's supposed to happen, because to say it would be really hard if you're fighting against that. And I think for me, there was a real sense of, well, do I want to die or do I want to live? Okay, I want to live. I like life. It's fun. We get to do this. We get to go outside. I want to live. So I have to do this stuff. And I can see a world I have so much sympathy for if you're in a real hell situation and death is more, life isn't that fun or something is bad or I don't know. I can see why, I don't want to do it. And I want to, so I just, for me, I felt I got a lot left and it's worth not being able to orgasm anymore to live still, because even though that's a huge bummer, I'm still trying to accept that that's the hardest thing. I still like life and I want to do this. So if you want, you just have to really think about, I think, death, and having cancer really puts it in perspective, I think.
Yeah, it would, because that's a very, very known threat to life. But let me just backtrack for a second. I don't think I understood when you said retrograde ejaculation. I want to focus on that, but you can orgasm, but you have retrograde ejaculation, which makes it very uncomfortable. Is that the thing?
Basically, this was a known outcome of the ab surgery. They damaged a nerve. Dr. Litwin said it was 25% chance. They are always too optimistic. I knew from looking on my Reddit, all the men have this in so many. Yes, I have it. Yes, I have it. And basically what the flap, it's now closed. Your semen goes back into your bladder. It's not painful. It's not dangerous. It doesn't feel as good, just to be frank. And certainly you can't have natural children. There is a procedure they can go into. I'm still making sperm. It's just not coming out the right tube. Okay. So it's lifelong, and there's nothing they can do at this point to fix it, really.
So there's a procedure maybe they could do to fix it, but it's
not fixed. They would go in and get the sperm if you want to have children.
I see. So they could recapture your sperm if you wanted to have offspring that were your progeny.
Correct. But they would cut you open for it.
And that's pretty demotivating for sex right now, it sounds like.
Certainly it has changed my relationship with real sex. Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to get into that?
Sure. I don't care.
Well, how has it changed?
Is it interesting for the pod? Yeah.
People that are making decisions, about this stuff. So how has it changed?
I have to accept that this basic sexual function of a human male is different than 99% of people now. And I have to really feel, I'm different. And this sex is such a vulnerable thing. And it's not working totally correctly. And that's super annoying. And I have to say to all the people listening, the hundreds of thousands, it's a big bummer. And my acceptance I'm struggling with accepting that, and I have to, and I'm going to, but yeah.
Should I tell people with eosinophilic esophagitis that I'm working with and other people with high eosinophils that they could get testicular cancer and end up not enjoying sex if they don't make changes? Should I try to scare them? What do you think?
I don't think so, but I like it.
Tricky, right?
I like it.
There is this whole fear-based model. So the idea, so there's this whole left in pop psychology, they talk about left brain versus right brain, and left brain is approach and right brain like love. And right brain is avoidant and fear. And some people are motivated by what they could achieve, and some people are motivated by what could kill them or what they want to achieve. And I wonder sometimes, like I do my best to try to tailor my communication style, to their style. It's tricky though, because if I miscalculate that, they're gone. They're like, this guy's an asshole. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or this guy is like, I don't give a shit about this. Like, why is he focused on this shit over here? Like, I really want him to like just level with me. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so sometimes, I'll just try to ask them, and I'll ask questions to kind of get a sense. Do they want more positive, like this is I could get, or this is what's going to happen if I don't? And it's tricky because like I just, at some point in the container of time I have with people, it's really hard to get into all that. And like people are very skeptical too, where they feel like I might be overreaching and might not have their best interest in mind and reaching for their pocketbook, for more time or supplements or whatever. And it's just like, I wonder from your perspective, how could a clinician bridge who understands kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4 degrees away from what we're working on? How do we tap into that better? You know what I mean? So that it doesn't, we don't get stuck in whack-a-mole land. You know what I mean?
I think it's there could be a level of asking what the person wants, because I think for me, even you saying that, I think personally, me as your client, I want a mixture of what are we reaching towards and what are we running from. I think that's a good, but hey, client X, would you like to get into what we're reaching towards or what we're running away from, or a mixture? Or I'm happy to be here. Because I really want to say, hearing you talk, I feel not sympathy, but I really feel for you that this is a hard thing around. How do I help these people? It's crazy.
It's good, but I love it. But it is, it's a challenge, not necessarily in a negative way, but it's like the stakes.
Yeah,
the stakes in my mind are pretty high if I don't find the language. I put a little pressure on myself to find the language to help people stay motivated. There is a whole field called motivational interviewing, which can be helpful, but that's something that came to mind when you were sharing your story. The other thing that came to mind I'd be interested in, and like, if you would be willing to go into any detail on, because so many people are afraid, haven't made peace with death. And you alluded to like Buddhism and some of your spiritual philosophical practice, but it sounds like you got to peace with all of that. And like, what was the biggest, did you have an aha moment? Was it, because I remember when I had that moment, like, what was it for you? What was that like? Where you finally just go, you know what, if I don't open my eyes, it's going to be okay. Like, I have more to live for. I want to be here, but it's okay if I don't. Like, how did you get there? Was it way before all of this? Because it sounds like cancer wasn't, you said, the thing that was keeping you down. You know what I mean? Because you had made some peace. I'm really interested to learn how you came to that, because I think a lot of people are struggling with that very thing. I can think of a few relatives right now that are really struggling with that, and maybe they'd be inspired to hear about what worked for you.
I think it's a bit of micro. I work on it every day around, and maybe it's my brain chemistry, I don't know, but I do feel like if I died tonight in my sleep, I could, would I want to do more things? Yes, but it's okay. And I don't know exactly where that's from, but certainly during the cancer treatment, I remember the night before going in to do the orchiectomy, that's the first moment, ball is coming out. I did a lot of journaling, and I just kept thinking, I cannot control whether I wake up from that anesthesia or not. And no one was saying I was going to die, but I was just kind of being a little more dramatic because I'm an artistic person. But I was saying, if I can't control it, then who cares? What are we doing? Then why am I worrying about? And, I think I have a relationship with my dad around stoicism and all of that kind of stuff, which I think is certainly interesting, a little masculine, but I think men and women can like that stuff. And I think like a few moments, another moment was this after chemo, I'm thinking about this surgery. I know that retrograde ejaculation is a potential side effect. I'm thinking it's unthinkable. I was so devastated. Unthinkable to do this. I do not want to mess with myself anymore. And then they told me it's happening. I was upset. And now we're 6 months later. And Samuel Beckett, I cannot go on, so I go on. That feels very connected to life.
Okay. Interesting.
Because I felt I cannot go on. And here I am, and I'm okay. Fine.
And you said your dad introduced you to Stoicism.
Yeah. And my mom is a Buddhist priest, so I've kind of grown up with this spiritual, for better or worse.
Yeah. So do you believe in karma?
Basically, yes. I believe that you have whatever you want to call it, you have a relationship with whatever the power of the world is. And you should take care of that relationship.
When you think about karma, one of my friends in Montreal has taught me a little bit about karma. And is karma the most stoic thing that you could say, basically? I mean, it kind of is, you just accept what is. Isn't that what is? Those two things seem very, very related. Do you think so?
I think Buddhism and Stoicism are practically the same thing.
Yeah. I never thought of it till just now, but it seems like it.
Because my mom and dad, not to get into my family, but they're very different people, but they do overlap on this spiritual thing around we have to accept life and enjoy it the best we can because we're dying little monkeys.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like it is a miracle, man. Like, call it what you want. It is an improbability that you and I are talking right now. Just the idea of the amount of sperm alone.
Totally.
Wow, we won, It's so wild. And, one of the things that I see so often and I'm getting old, I'm much older than you. So it's something that I've really noticed. And I start to feel like Clint Eastwood in some of these movies where he's just like shaking his head, he's this old guy, but it's like nihilism, like the fact we're here. I've developed such an appreciation of working with people that are struggling and watching them recover and seeing the value, if there's such a thing, in recovery. And the confidence a person can get, the appreciation for life that can happen when you're missing something and you get it back. And just a miracle that we're here, without getting into the spirituality of that, just the probability even. It's just so fascinating to me. And also, like, it's so sad, the amount of nihilism that is out there, you know what I mean? And I do like Stoicism. If you've never read Marcus Aurelius or The Art of Living, Epictetus is cool. They basically have Epictetus is they're very small readings. You're not reading. They're like by the date. You just open it and you read it. You just read a little thing, and it can keep you in the moment, and it can keep you like kind of focused on what is within your capacity to actually manage. You know what I mean? Like, there is so much going on, one thing that happened to me this summer was I went to a conference in Costa Rica, and it was a bunch of like entrepreneurial spirited people that were there to solve the X factors. So that are like taking out humanity, or could, AI, global warming, nuclear threat, depopulation, interestingly enough. And it's like, when you realize how close we are, sometimes one of two things can happen. You can start freaking out, or you can just be like, I've never heard this quote that you just described. It's kind of like, well, that is what it is. So what am I going to do now? You do the best you can, you make the choices that you can, and you live the life that you want to live, or as close as you can. I mean, that's the beauty, at least living in this country. I feel like we have the choice. So,
and those are macro things. terrorists, economic, all of that stuff. But there's also micro of you're a good driver, you're in your car, you're at the stoplight, no, you've done everything right. The chicken, truck comes and smashes you and you die. And that, you or me, it could happen at any moment. So I think remembering that, it's like, well, we should try to live. Obviously, we need money. Obviously, there are chores. There are things we don't want to do in life, of course. And I'm not, people take care of your finances, obviously. But there is something around, you only get one life, so might as well try to have a little fun. Do something you like.
Yeah, right. We'll get one of those self-driving cars, dude. Like,
Yeah,
that'll
but
be
those
fun.
can implode on you and crush you like the submarine.
So would you say in that situation, I always thought karma was like almost like you get what you deserve kind of thing. But karma, that's not what karma is it?
I think that could be one reading of it. For me, karma is just the relationship with the universe.
So like what's next for you? Like what are you doing? I mean, things are going well, dude. It's really good to hear. It's good to see your hair coming back. Like what's next for you? What are your plans? What do you want to do with this extra time?
Yeah, what a great question.
Something big.
I do feel like everything has changed for sure. I know many people with cancer say that. It's a gift wrapped in barbed wire, that's for sure. I think I need to keep finding authentically who I am, because I think for a long time in my life, I've tried to make money, be independent, survive. I've come a long way. Both of us grew up in the Midwest. I had no connections to Hollywood. Now I make a living as a director and a producer. I live in Chinatown, LA. So that is, I've done a lot of things, and I have to figure out, well, what do I really want to do now? I'm 32 years old. I got a lot of life left. Let's see.
Okay, and so are you on a project right now other than this podcast? What else you got going on?
I got 2 other podcasts. I'm going to France again for the same thing that I went. It's Cannes Film Festival. We're doing these immersive theater parties. I'm not the producer anymore, but I'm going to help them. And I don't know. We're gonna see, man.
So what are you doing? What are you doing for stress reduction this time? Are you going to be stressed out this time?
No, I'm not taking on as much stuff.
Okay, good. I don't want to hear about another marble growing on this.
No.
What's left? What's left?
No, I'm excited. I'm excited about the future, and I'm gonna really try. I think it all starts, and I'm not saying that because of this podcast. It does start with your health. Me feeling better makes me feel like the world is my oyster. Because in January, I felt like things are dark, dark days.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine it would. And so now you say there's little barbed wire. Is that just the possibility it could come back?
Yeah, but you could get cancer too. It's kind of, you had it.
Oh, I might have cancer right now. The thing is like there are tests out there. I'm not so sure about them yet. Okay, but there's called liquid biopsies that you can do. One of them was around about the time I met you, okay, and then they were pulled. I don't know if the FDA pulled them or they just failed as a business model, but now there's a couple more that are out there, and some people will tell you that, okay, you can go get this test. Any of us could go get this test, and it will measure in your blood for DNA of tumors, of over I don't know, a pretty high amount of tumors. Wow. And there can be false positives, which could imagine how freaky that would be.
Yeah.
Okay. But then there's also, it could be false negatives too. But if that's there, the idea is if you catch it the size of a pinhead or smaller, then the intervention isn't like pulling it out and chemo. The intervention could be at that point lifestyle change. So that's one of the things I'm really excited that I'm probably going to get more into that as the technology advances. I'm really passionate about prevention, and I have this feeling that a person could run like the Gallery test, and I'm not connected to them in any way, but that's one name of the test. It's like $900, and it's like, okay, you have a family history of colon cancer. You did a colonoscopy, which is the gold standard to check for that, and it came back clean, but you came back on a Gallery test. Okay, that means that you might have a little bit of cancer tumor proliferation, but that the thing is like the gold standard, in my opinion, shouldn't be early detection, which is what all these screening procedures are. That's what a colonoscopy is. That's what a mammogram is. It's early detection. It's not prevention. And even the Gallery test is early detection, not prevention. But there's things that are like, for example, what we saw with your white blood cells that are clear indications of a problem that if we address those things, then maybe it never gets that far. And I just think that would be so cool if we could build that type of testing into an insurance model, and we could build that type of testing or awareness into like an educational model. So at a very early age, children can understand their choices more, and families can understand their choices more, and they have access to things that can allow them to do that rather than, I mean, you have access to doctors that were able to perform these miracle procedures for you, and it's a blessing, and not everybody has access to that in other parts of the world or even in the US. And it would be, I'm just really interested in like, what else can we do to do affect change that would allow less people to need that by enabling them with choice and then letting them choose. Like, look, some people are going to smoke, and they're just going to keep smoking, and that's fine. But like, what about the people that were working around asbestos and now they're dealing with lung cancer? Were they given a choice? People that live in houses that have asbestos still in their ceiling, are they given a choice? So I don't know, man. I just really appreciate what you've been through, how articulate you are about it, your willingness to share this story. I mean, dude, this was your idea. I thought about this podcast a while. I had started it right before the pandemic, or right during the pandemic. It kind of shut down. I put it on the back burner, and it was your encouragement that has me doing this. So if you don't like this, then blame this guy right here.
Well, what I want to say about your podcast and you, and this is not really about you. This is about what the gifts I've been given through working with you, just because I found you and we like each other and we've been working together, and I'm super, grateful for that. But this idea that we can all have kind of individual custom medical plans and medical exploration, and that idea, just that it's out there and you can find it, and I found you on YouTube. I just think something that I'm so glad that you're saying I encouraged you, but I believe it. And it's not about you. It's more about getting this idea out there that, hey, you can find cutting edge stuff, and it might help you in a different way than the hero medicine, what you're calling the hero medicine. And I think that is, as we get into the next era of futurism, I think that is super important.
What do you think about the cost of all that? Like, do you think I'm too expensive?
Well, that's something we should talk about, because I do think right now there is something prohibitive about this. And I don't know how to fix that, but certainly I notice I spend money on you but I think it's worth it. But it is, I'm privileged that I have a job that can handle it, that I have, but I have to say, I think it is, we should talk about the financial aspect, because it's part of it.
I think so too. And the challenge for me is I'm not high volume. You know what I mean? Yeah. To go deep with people, to do the research, to do like the fine, like the comb through sand, to find it, to be able to have the time to spend with somebody to help them understand why they need to make the changes, or why the changes they could make would benefit them, not need to, but to get into that story in a way that doesn't feel like I'm just jerking them around, or that's also believable and that actually empowers them. It requires time. And you know what? Insurance companies don't want to pay for that. They want to pay for procedures that are known to be researched to treat specific conditions. And so, when people work with me, they are making an investment. But, one of the things I'm trying to do, I do have a nonprofit that I'm working with. I'm not super active with it right now, but it's one of my goals to get back into it, is to try to work with children in schools and help some of the stuff that I see driving the immune things that we talked about, including allergy, vulnerability to cancer, and vulnerability to autoimmunity, things like asthma, ADHD, work with them in a school setting, just like you can work with people get screened for for lice. They do the lice screenings. Like, why can't you like what's called primitive reflex screening with like 6-year-olds, and then have like brain camp for these kids to work them through that, so that all of the downstream effects of the frontal lobe not being able to engage in allostasis, which is return to homeostasis, as those are as much as possible off the table, and make that part of an educational model instead of relying on healthcare to do the job of what education could have done. And I think that would be beautiful. I do understand that, I have actually worked with people, dude, where I've given it away. And, for whatever reason, the people that are getting it for free are having a harder time making the choice to make the changes that they need to make because the financial investment. So the financial part of it isn't meant to be punitive, but it can help with the commitment aspect of what's necessary. It's like, I'm not going to spend money on this thing if I can't actually do what this doctor's recommending. That is a factor. So
it's like in theater, people, when you give them free tickets, never show up. But $75 tickets, they show up because they paid for them.
They don't show up with free tickets?
Free tickets never show up. 50% of people. So if your show is free, it's better if your show is $5 because then people will come.
That's really interesting. Wow. Okay. But, just so you know, I'd like to make this more accessible to people. And I feel like if I can perfect the model and then get the conversation going, get these nonprofits active, get the educational model up and going, then we can actually create a sea change in healthcare. And it doesn't have to be necessarily people are spending their hard-earned money just trying to get back to baseline. Like, what if they, on pennies on the dollar, they could get an education that was part of their education and then avoid all of that and then just be living the life that they were meant to live. I think that there is an aspect to suffering as part of maturity. I hate to say that. Everybody goes through stuff. It's a privilege to be able to help people overcome that. But my job isn't to rescue them. My job is to help them understand why, so that they can make the changes so that they're not in my office repeatedly. And I think the transformative process is something I'm very excited about. And it is part of a growth that all of us go through. We can either accept that we're going to change and do things differently so that we can attain what we want, and then we get rewarded with that extra vitality, or we can resign and just enjoy life as much as we can, but understanding that maybe we're giving up on getting our vitality back. And some people have injuries where they have loss of function, where they cannot get the vitality back that they want. And then aging is a real thing. I mean, there are clinics out there that will tell you that aging is just a number while they look through their, bifocals to read, what they're writing, but it's pretty fascinating what's available to us in the information age. And I just encourage people to keep doing the best that they can, get a lot of opinions. Remember though, that so many opinions online are not about you. And so like this whole like biohacking thing is a beautiful thing, but you can do harm with that. And you could also be missing something. So really try to align yourself with a clinician that can help you be preventative if you're into that, because it's out there for sure.
And I think everything you're doing, even with this podcast around this is education. This podcast is not because you need more clients or you want to be an influencer.
This isn't education. This is entertainment.
Yeah. But there's something around, we just want to keep encouraging you. Putting it out there is for free. This is a free, and I think there's something around, even just these conversations are like, people can see what's happening and that might influence them.
Totally. I mean, look, I'm here during clinic hours doing this.
I love it. I'm
investing in you guys.
The last thing I want to say before we go is philosophical. Hamlet, because I'm a theater person, I thought a lot about Hamlet this year, and especially To Be or Not to Be, one of the most famous soliloquies of all time. And what I want to say, and this is, again, something I found from Cancer, which is beautifully documented, old Shakespeare, is he's thinking, should I kill myself or should I keep going? His life is hard. His dad has died. And basically what he says in Old English is, well, maybe death is going to be worse than this. And maybe the dreams are going to be nightmares. And yeah, okay, I'll stay alive. And I think that's just quickly to sum up my philosophy around what I've learned from Cancer is you have to make a decision of, do you want to live or do you want to die? And if ever the TH1, TH2 scales are too in the favor of life is too horrible, then do something else. But I think me and Hamlet made the same choice. We want to live.
Well, I'm sure glad you did. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the next one. So the next time we do this, next season, let's try to make this in person. So I'm going to get my studio up and going. But thank you for making the time today. Looking forward to the next one, and let's do this again for sure.
Thank you for having me.
I just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in. I just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in.